Hey, it's Sol with another video, and well, it's more like a listen, kind of a podcasty thing. So whatever I have on screen is just whatever I have. Today, I wanted to talk about a video that I watched like just recently. I watched it, I'd say like half an hour ago, and I spent a little bit of time collecting my thoughts, and I wanted to follow up on it. This was a video that was released by Preach or of Preach Gaming just the other day or something like that. And normally, I guess I should get this out of the way. I mean, I think Preach is a very good content creator, and I have nothing bad to say about this video that I'm going to respond and follow up to. And the reason why it came onto my radar at all is I guess it's just kind of a double-pronged attack where I saw it on MMO Champion, someone linked it, and you see the usual thing where people are just trash talking Preach, go like, "Oh, well, why is he relevant?" and yada yada yada. But also on my Discord channel and in my guild chat, I just call it guild chat. I saw a link from Shaddix that linked to the same video, and he had a response. Let me pull this up and read what he had to say. So he said, so Preach has a new video series where he boosted a new character on a new account and tried to gear up to get either a complete 15 in the time for in time, or to complete Heroic and Taurus, and this video really hit home. It's not about gear, it's about knowing your class and knowing the mechanics. The rest is easy by comparison. Good watch for those that run out there in the hashtag pug life. And this, so it interested me because anyone who watches any of my stuff or listens to anything that I have to say, you guys know that I don't do the pug life. Kind of like Preach, I'm in a guild. I'm just not in a mythic guild or, a world top 100 sort of guild. But he and I play a similar game in that we don't really have to worry about those sorts of nuances or those sorts of situations that happen with pugs, like needing a certain needing a certain item level or Raider IO score, which, to be honest, I'm not familiar with at all. So if I start talking about it and I lose you, it's because I actually just, I'm just kind of guessing or making an assumption. So I apologize in advance. But like I said, I wanted to respond and follow up, not because I disagree with what Preach said. And I do suggest taking a look at that video or taking a listen to it. There's not much to really look at. It's just a lot of footage, but he literally does do that. He goes through a series of dungeons. You can see footage of those dungeon runs, and it's like a lot of anecdotes. And eventually it builds into a response as to just kind of how awful the game feels in that sort of mindset when you're just going through all sorts of mythic dungeons and you're trying to build up and trying to reach that goal of getting to a plus 15 with a new character. And it is hard to do something like that, especially in such a short amount of time. But Preach pointed out a couple of weaknesses in the World of Warcraft with regards to group building in that sense. Like I said, he's right from that sort of perspective. A lot of what WoW comes down to is executing on mechanics correctly and being able to perform to expectations. The one thing that he didn't touch on as much, and what I'm going to be mostly talking about, is how to manage those kinds of expectations, or let me be more accurate, the failure to manage and control those sorts of expectations in part of group builders and people that join these groups. And in fact, we see how the culture of group building has kind of changed throughout Legion with things like the Raider IO score, the prevalence of item level, and things like that. Because what it does is that those sorts of systems, they kind of try to tell the story of you, the person, or your character, for you, instead of actually just talking with the people that you're trying to group with. Most of the time, at least from my observations, you try to get into a group, they'll ask, "Oh, what's your Radar IO score?" Or they'll try to examine your score through the add-on. They see what it is, they may or may not be impressed, and then you're out. And this kind of works both ways, where you might have, one person might have a very impressive score, but it's not very indicative of what their actual performance is going to be when you get into this dungeon run. They might hella suck, right? Or they might be total dirtbags. Someone who might have this really awesome score that person might have the expectation, okay, I'm going to be carrying these people as long as they at least kind of know what they're doing, then we'll be okay. And if their needs aren't, their expectations aren't met, there's a pretty good chance that they'll just bounce because they know that they can just jump right back into the group finder with their awesome score and jump right into it once again. Now, don't get me wrong. Knowing how to play this game it's obviously very important to your enjoyment of it. If you don't really know how to play, you're just kind of jumping in and you're walking over hot coals, you're not going to have a very good time. And the people that are grouping with you, they're not going to have a very good time either, seeing someone stay in fire or refuse to hide behind a wall or line of sight or anything like that. But I did notice, and I guess this is a small critique of mine, just a small one, where at least listening to Preach and listening to him go from dungeon to dungeon and, I went from 11 to a 9 to an 11 again to a 13 and so on and so forth. I read a couple of ticks, and maybe it's pretty obvious, but he's a pretty good player. And from that, he has his own expectations where, I'm trying to remember an example where if you're not at a plus 10, right? If you're not at a plus 10, I was able to read from him. It's like, oh man, this stuff is so easy. It's, a child can, okay, maybe he didn't say that exactly, but he really reflected on the opinion that stuff is super easy. And then when you go from a 9 to a 10, and I'll bring up his other critique in a little bit, things do get a little bit harder because you have to deal with either a fortified or tyrannical. But even then, they're pretty manageable as long as you have a basic understanding of the dungeon mechanics, and of course you know how to play your own class. His critique on the jump in difficulty from a 9 to a 10, it was pretty on point, but it's also reflective of the Q&A that Josh Allen and Ian Hezekosis had just the other day, where they were planning in the Battle for Azeroth expansion to take fortified and tyrannical, and instead of making those plus 10 affixes, to bring them all the way down to the 2 affixes. So along with everything else that goes there, you might get fortified or tyrannical. You might get, the double HP from bosses or trash mobs. And that sounds like a good change so far, because from that you still have like harder mobs and harder bosses and whatnot, but you don't have that immediate jump from a 9 to a 10 where, oh my god, all of a sudden the trash is like deadly, or the bosses will just totally one-shot you. The difficulty is still there, right? But the jump from a 9 to a 10 is not. So that's something that they're trying to resolve, and I think overall that's a good thing, because because the game manages that sort of expectation for the players. It doesn't surprise them, and instead we're going to get whatever in the plus 10 affixes, to further complicate the meta and make things a little bit more interesting. So I'm reading this quote by Shaddix again, where okay, let me look at this again. It's not about gear, he says. It's about knowing your class and knowing the mechanics, and the rest is easy by comparison. And I don't mean to knock you, Shad, in case you're listening. What you say is very, very true. What you and Preach are saying, you're right. It is not 100% about just having the gear and expecting easy mode. But it's also not entirely about knowing your class and even the dungeon mechanics, because you have to get to that point somehow. Because the most important thing that we would want to look at when looking at like this whole pug world is, how do you make a group successful? How do you make a group successful? Is it being able to totally overgear the place? Is it about having the most elite players that are in there, just trucking the place no matter what kind of gear they have? Sorry, that was my phone. The short answer is yes, but there's more to that, because it depends on what kind of people and personalities that you have in there. So I'm probably going to have a Mythic Plus running in the background. It's the first dungeon that I've run in like well over a month. It's a Court of Stars. I think it's a 16. The idea was for me to finally get my plus 15 achievement. Yes, that's how credible I am in this video and this response. but I'll at least tell you that throughout the run, I was able to kind of gauge the difference between like myself and Chad, who again, I'm not trying to call out, but I'm just pointing out the difference between he and I when it comes to those sorts of expectations where he's like, oh man, this thing is so easy. I kept hearing that a lot, that certain things were very easy, and maybe they are. They probably are, but it depends on your gear. It depends on the knowledge of the knowledge of your team, but it also depends on, it really does depend on who you're with, because if you know these people, like this was a guild run, obviously. If you know these people, we're a lot more forgiving about things, obviously, because we're guildmates. But this doesn't necessarily have to apply only to a guild either. Like I said, it's more so than anything about managing expectations and making sure that when you have your group together, that everyone is on the same page with things. During Preacher's video, you catch a lot of instances where, one that stood out was that I think they were trying to make a group, and the group was just waiting for a tank, and it took a while. And one person offered, I think it was like a DPS, one of the DPS offered to switch to their tank spec, and so they did. But before that, I believe Preacher was asking this person, hey, are you sure? Are you sure you want to tank this? Because this is a hard dungeon. I think it was a cathedral. And the guy was like, yeah, I got this. I know what to do. And things didn't turn out that way. The tank did not know what to do. I believe it was a bolstering affix that they were dealing with during this video. And so it was a big struggle. There was wipes all over the place. And I don't recall if they had finished the run, but it was just one of those typical Mythic Plus disasters that most of us have experienced at one point or many points. And this would have been solved just fine if there was just a little bit more patience in part of the team who would have just been willing to wait for this other tank to show up, or a little bit of guidance. Like if they really wanted to, they could have gotten into like voice chat and communicate everything through. But again, this is something that I would say is that tank's fault for not communicating. And that also goes into that whole kind of thing with voice chat where, some people are like, I have to get into voice chat. God, these guys are a bunch of noobs, or, it kind of has that sort of stigma too, where you don't really want to listen to people because you have that expectation that everyone should be knowing what to do. I don't think that's entirely fair. I would like to think that voice chat would be something that's a little bit better embraced by in part of most players, but I'm guessing here, so please correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm guessing that at that sort of level, when it comes to Mythic Plus play, there's that constant expectation that people know what they're doing. You can have something in your description that, hey, this is a learning run, this is for nubs, and, we're just looking at, or something like that. But then you probably get a group that won't fill. And I'm totally in agreement with Preach that when it comes to just pugging these sorts of runs, it's a pretty shitty experience from everything that I've observed, from forums, from videos, from my guildmates who just talk crap about some of these awful runs that they've had. And I feel for them. It's a failure in part of the players who are unable to communicate or just be honest about their actual skill level, either when it comes to playing their class or understanding dungeons. And it also is a failure in part of Blizzard, who, I don't know, it's very difficult for any company, but I'll just blame Blizzard anyways. It's very hard to, I guess it's really hard for a company to tell players, hey, you guys should just talk to each other more, because that's what's going to help foster relationships. But it goes back to what I've been harping about for months and years or so, about how they need to make a new group finder. They need to improve the social tools in order to better communicate these sorts of things, because I guess the entire platform that I'm trying to go on is to make a successful group, regardless of the actual skill level of the people, regardless of the actual skill level and gear level of the people that are trying to get in these sorts of groups. How do you get these people? How do you get the right people together? So this is something that I'm putting a lot of my hopes on Blizzard for this, with this whole community tool that they're going to develop for the Battle for Azeroth expansion. If you guys don't know already, it's just a way to basically create like an internal Discord channel or an internal chat channel that applies to your faction for the purpose of communication, maybe group building, and so on and so forth. And I think that what this does, I think that this sort of tool creates a platform in game, not like Discord or whatever, but it creates a platform in game where you can create your own little microcosm of a group finder tool, something like that. It's like a super filter that you as a channel owner will be able to run yourself, and you can bring whoever you want in. But from that, the channel owner, whoever that is, or the community leader person, they're able to curate the expectations and manage these things so that way everyone has a pretty good idea of what's going on. So for example, let's say I'm the community person, the community leader. Hey, this is Soul's channel, and I want to make a community that is all about learning, and I'm gonna have it all loud and proud on top of my chat thing, my community thing, is that we're here to do dungeons and raids, but we're all about learning and communication and patience, right? So obviously this is going to be a bunch of noobs and casuals and whatnot that are going to show up, but otherwise but at the same time, you may get a number of people who are interested in helping others, because believe it or not, there are benevolent people out there in the World of Warcraft community space who are out to help people. And there are Discord channels and other things that are available there that maybe they're kind of out of reach for people in game because they don't really know where to look. I think a community like this, as long as it's able to advertise and bring these types of people in, from there it can organically grow into something where, okay, cool, I'm going to set up a group together. This is going to be like a +5. So I encourage people that are of that skill level to come right in. If you are interested in carrying this group, then cool, go ahead and sign up too. We'll get you in. But otherwise, think of this as a learning run. We're going to progress. We are going to be in voice chat for this, so we can talk through everything, whether it's the internal Blizzard one or through Discord or Vent or TeamSpeak or whatever the hell you want it to be. But it gives players that sort of control. And again, it really solidifies those expectations. Whereas, at least as of right now, you can think of the pre-made group tool that's currently in Legion as it's a community tool, but there's only one channel, and like everybody's on there. So you gotta filter through and try to find and try to find the group that you want, and everyone is already in there. Anyone can participate. Whereas with a community tool, you can curate who you have. And if there's someone that you don't like, that you think is like garbage, I think you can get them banned, or you can kick them from the channel, or haze them, or whatever. So if we were to do this again, if we were to make a community and it's all about the best of the best, this is the Wednesday 9 o'clock Mythic Plus 15 and up club, all right? And anyone less, screw you. You have to be invited. Not everyone can get into this exclusive club. And like, here we go. And this is something that exists now. You can set up like, your whole BattleNet list for something like this, but this is a way for to have that sort of external transparency too, because from what I believe, you can search for communities, and you can possibly search for this dungeon running club on your own too. And there's no doubt that there's going to be a good number of them, but you could also have your own too. This is a way for anybody, if they really wanted to try doing it, they can start dipping their feet into community building, group leading, and possibly try to get something like this up by themselves. And from there comes the other things. Well, it's not like it comes in an order, right? It's not like you have to get the gear first, then you get the experience, and then you can find the decent group. It can come in any order that you want, but and I'm sure it's more than that. But I just want to add the whole social aspect to it as well. Grouping in the World of Warcraft or any MMO, it's more than just the rank that you have beside your name or the Raider IO score. It's more than just the cosmetics that you're wearing, the gear that you're wearing. It's more than your achievements. It's also more than just talking and communicating, because you have to be good at that, or at least reasonably good enough at that to improve. And of course, you need to want to improve too, because otherwise, what the hell are you doing here? So I guess to sum up my thoughts for right now, I do agree with what Preach is saying that pugging is just really doo-doo right now, and what we have right now in terms of tools, it sucks. Regarding Mythic Plus, going from 9s to 10s can be a bit surprising for some players, and because of that, that creates a sort of this whole thing. It creates a sort of air of toxicity when it comes to managing expectations. On top of that, I feel that the social aspect is extremely important, that it's really important to get the right people together. And my hopes are kind of pinned on the new community tool coming in Biffa, that being able to create, the ability to create a community of your own. I think that organically you might see a couple of surprising things and some really awesome communities that come out. I'm going to try to do one myself. It may or may not be successful, but I think that if there are a lot of groups that help promote all levels of play, from the casual to the hardcore to the super elite, and we can curate and find the groups that we want, as well as bring in the people that we want, I think that overall, the World of Warcraft is going to improve as a game, even if it feels like the communities are being fragmented even more so than normal, because the whole community tool it's not about realm anymore. It's about the entire region. It's just that you're building your own little microcosm, or you can pretty much call it a guild. You're building a small community of your own. And that's something that Blizzard and World of Warcraft tends to celebrate. These smaller groups, not just the entire player base, like what the pre-made group tool tries to encompass, but trying to use these communities as a way to filter out the things that you don't like. Anyway, I thought this was a cool subject to discuss, so I want to thank Preach for that video and his thoughts. I think they're valid. I do advise, I'm going to have a link below. Take a look at the video, take a listen, see what you think. See if I was on the mark with what he was trying to say, and of course, respond here in a comment below. Let me know what you think about this whole thing with pugs and expectations, and whether or not all this stuff matters. How important is having the gear, or is there too much gear? Just what is it that you think is wrong with this whole pug life? And I'll be excited to read the comments. So thanks for watching, and as always, please like and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you in the next thing that I do, and until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.